Imagine yourself 40,000 years ago in a frozen world where survival was a daily battle. The landscape, harsh and unforgiving. Temperatures plummeting far below freezing. Every day, a desperate fight for food, shelter, and life itself. Now think about who mastered these hostile lands, the Neanderthals. But who were they, really? How did they live? And perhaps the greatest mystery of all, why did they disappear? The Neanderthals weren't just some primitive ancestors. They were our closest cousins, inhabiting Europe and parts of Asia for over 300,000 years. Just let that sink in. 300,000 years of survival in some of the most challenging conditions our planet has ever seen. These remarkable beings weathered multiple ice ages, hunted massive beasts that would terrify even the bravest modern humans, and developed skills that scientists are still marveling at today. They crafted sophisticated tools, created art, built shelters, and even practiced medicine in their own way. Yet despite their incredible strength, their remarkable intelligence, and their proven ability to adapt, they vanished mysteriously from the face of the earth. Today, we're going to journey back in time to explore the daily lives of these extraordinary prehistoric survivors. We'll walk in their footsteps, see the world through their eyes, and perhaps uncover some answers to the questions that have puzzled scientists for generations. If you're fascinated by history and want to unravel the mysteries of humanity's greatest stories, hit that like button right now, subscribe to The Dawn of Humankind, and make sure you never miss an episode. This is just the beginning of our adventure through time. When we think of hunting in the modern world, we might picture someone with high-tech gear and weapons. But Neanderthals, they were the true masters of the hunt, operating in a world we can barely imagine. Picture this. A landscape dominated by creatures straight out of a fantasy film. Massive, woolly mammoths standing 13 feet tall at the shoulder, their curved tusks stretching longer than a man is tall. Woolly rhinoceroses charging across frozen plains, thick fur protecting them from the bitter cold. Giant elk with antler spans wider than two men with outstretched arms. These weren't just animals. They were moving mountains of muscle and fur that could crush a Neanderthal with a single misstep. Yet somehow, our ancient cousins didn't just survive among these giants. They thrived by hunting them. The Neanderthals developed hunting techniques so advanced that they still astonish archaeologists today. They crafted wooden spears with fire-hardened tips, sharpened to deadly points. But here's what makes them truly remarkable. They didn't hunt alone. Evidence shows they worked in coordinated groups, using sophisticated ambush tactics. They would drive these enormous beasts into natural traps, narrow valleys, boggy areas, or against cliff faces, where the animal's size became a disadvantage. Imagine a small band of Neanderthals, bodies compact but immensely strong, surrounding a woolly mammoth. Their muscles, significantly more powerful than ours, tensed as they prepared to thrust their spears simultaneously. This wasn't reckless bravery. This was calculated strategy refined over countless generations. But hunting for Neanderthals went beyond mere strength. It required something we often overlook: incredible cooperation and communication. They needed to read each other's intentions, coordinate their movements, and adapt their plans in real time, all without the benefit of written language. This suggests levels of social complexity and intelligence that completely shatter the old, brutish caveman stereotype. And speaking of shattering stereotypes, did you know that Neanderthals were the first beings to deliberately bury their dead? This isn't just speculation. Archaeologists have uncovered Neanderthal remains carefully placed in shallow graves, some dating back over 60,000 years. Even more remarkable, some of these burials included offerings, flowers placed with the bodies, as evidenced by pollen remains, and treasured objects like tools or animal bones positioned deliberately alongside the deceased. Just think about what this means. These supposedly primitive beings cared for their dead, honored them, and perhaps even believed in some form of afterlife. They grieved, they remembered. They created rituals to process loss, emotional complexities we rarely associate with prehistoric humans. This single discovery revolutionized how we view Neanderthals. These weren't mindless brutes focused only on survival. They were thinking, feeling beings with rich inner lives and deep social bonds that extended beyond death itself. So the next time someone uses Neanderthal as an insult, you might want to correct them. Far from being simple or primitive, these incredible hunters combined physical prowess with strategic thinking and emotional depth in ways that helped them dominate some of the harshest environments on Earth for hundreds of thousands of years. Now, let's talk about Neanderthal innovation. If you're picturing crude rocks tied to sticks, prepare to have your mind completely blown. Despite living in an age long before metals were discovered, Neanderthals were remarkable engineers and craftspeople. They didn't just use tools, they created sophisticated toolkits specifically designed for different tasks. Imagine a Neanderthal sitting by a fire, carefully striking one stone against another. With each precise hit, flakes of stone chip away. This wasn't random bashing. This was a sophisticated technique called knapping that required incredible hand-eye coordination and a deep understanding of how different stones break. These weren't just any stones either. Neanderthals were selective, often traveling long distances to obtain specific types of stone with the right properties. Flint was particularly prized for its ability to hold a sharp edge. From these carefully chosen materials, they crafted an impressive array of specialized tools, sharp-edged stone knives that could easily cut through tough animal hide, finely made scrapers for preparing skins for clothing, essential for surviving the bitter Ice Age winters. Delicate awls and borers that could punch holes through leather for stitching garments together. One particularly fascinating discovery is the levallois technique, a complex method of stone preparation that allowed Neanderthals to create standardized, pre-planned tools. This wasn't simple, opportunistic tool use. This was technological innovation requiring abstract thinking and planning. But perhaps their greatest technological achievement was their mastery of fire. Archaeological evidence shows that Neanderthals weren't just using naturally occurring fires from lightning strikes. They were creating and maintaining their own flames. Think about what this means. In a world where temperatures could plummet far below freezing, the ability to create warmth on demand wasn't just a convenience. It was the difference between life and death. Fire transformed their lives in countless ways. It provided warmth in the freezing climate. It allowed them to cook food, making tough meat more digestible and killing harmful bacteria. It created light in the darkness of caves and winter nights. And perhaps most importantly, it kept dangerous predators, like cave lions and hyenas, at a safe distance. Here's something that might surprise you. There's evidence suggesting Neanderthals may have even created a form of primitive glue. By heating birch bark to extremely specific temperatures, they produced a natural adhesive they used to attach stone points to wooden handles. This required not just technical knowledge, but precise temperature control, a level of sophistication that defies the old stereotype of the simple caveman. When you really think about it, these technological innovations reveal something profound about Neanderthals. They weren't just surviving, they were problem solvers, constantly adapting and improving their tools to meet the challenges of their harsh environment. Imagine the countless generations of knowledge passed down from elder to child, each adding their own discoveries and refinements. Without books, without formal education systems, they created a technological tradition that lasted for hundreds of thousands of years. Far from being primitive, Neanderthal technology represents one of humanity's greatest achievements. The ability to transform raw materials from the environment into tools that extended their capabilities and allowed them to thrive in conditions that would quickly kill most modern humans. But Neanderthals weren't just skilled individuals working alone. Their survival depended on something equally important: community. If there's one thing that defined Neanderthal existence more than hunting prowess or tool-making skill, it was their deep commitment to community. Their survival wasn't just about individual strength, it was about belonging to something greater than themselves. Imagine a small group of about 20 to 30 individuals gathered around a fire as twilight falls. Children play nearby while elders share knowledge through stories and demonstrations. This wasn't just a loose collection of individuals, this was a family in the truest sense of the word. Archaeological evidence paints a touching picture of Neanderthal social life. They lived in tight-knit groups, typically extended family units, where every member had a role and purpose. These weren't massive tribes, they were intimate communities where everyone knew each other intimately, relied on one another daily, and contributed to the group's survival. But perhaps nothing reveals the depth of their compassion more than how they cared for their sick and injured. At the Shanidar cave in Iraq, archaeologists discovered the remains of a male Neanderthal who had survived despite devastating injuries. He had a crushed eye socket and withered arm, injuries that would have left him unable to hunt or fully care for himself. Yet, he lived for many years after these injuries, possibly into his 40s, ancient by Ice Age standards. How did he survive? The only possible explanation is that his community cared for him. They shared their food, protected him, and valued his life even when he couldn't contribute physically to the hunt. This wasn't just basic survival. This was compassion, empathy, and a recognition of human dignity that we typically associate with much more recent civilizations. And he wasn't alone. Across numerous archaeological sites, we find evidence of Neanderthals who survived serious injuries, disabilities, and illnesses because they were cared for by their communities. Some skeletons show signs of arthritis so severe these individuals would have needed daily assistance. Others reveal healed fractures that would have required someone to set the bone, create primitive splints, and provide care during recovery. Think about what this means for our understanding of Neanderthal society. In the harshest environment imaginable, where every calorie was precious and every day brought new dangers, these ancient people made the conscious choice to care for their vulnerable members. They didn't abandon them to conserve resources. They shared what little they had. This reveals something profound. Neanderthals understood that their greatest strength wasn't in individual power, but in their bonds with each other. They recognized that knowledge, experience, and wisdom had value beyond physical capability. They saw that survival depended on maintaining the integrity of the group, on preserving the connections between members, on treating each other with dignity. So did you know that Neanderthals were actually the first to bury their dead? This wasn't just disposal of bodies, this was ritual, ceremony, perhaps even spiritual practice. It shows a level of emotional complexity and social bonding that completely transforms how we should view these remarkable people. If you're enjoying this journey into the real lives of Neanderthals, please hit that like button right now, share this video with friends who love history, and subscribe to The Dawn of Humankind for more incredible stories from our past. And I'm curious, what has surprised you most about Neanderthals so far? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Was it their sophisticated hunting techniques, their advanced tool-making, or perhaps this glimpse into their compassionate community life? Let me know. Imagine stepping outside your home right now into a world where the temperature has plummeted to 40 degrees below freezing. The wind cuts like knives against your skin. Snow and ice stretch as far as the eye can see. No grocery stores, no central heating, no thermal clothing engineered in laboratories. This wasn't just a bad winter for Neanderthals. This was their reality for thousands upon thousands of years during what we now call the last glacial period. Europe and parts of Asia were locked in one of the most extreme cold snaps our planet has ever experienced. In these conditions, survival wasn't just challenging, it seemed virtually impossible. Yet the Neanderthals didn't merely survive these conditions. They mastered them through remarkable adaptations, both physical and behavioral. Let's start with their homes. Forget the stereotypical image of primitive caves. While Neanderthals did use natural shelters when available, they also constructed sophisticated dwellings that would impress even modern survival experts. At sites like Moldova in Ukraine, archaeologists have discovered the remains of Neanderthal structures built using the massive bones of woolly mammoths. Imagine the ingenuity required to transform the skeleton of a 12-ton beast into the framework of a home. These mammoth bones formed the foundation and supports, while stretched animal hides created walls and roofs. Inside these structures, central hearths provided crucial warmth. Some dwellings even show evidence of internal divisions, separate areas for different activities like sleeping, tool-making, and food preparation. These weren't just random shelters thrown together in desperation. They were carefully designed homes that protected Neanderthal families from the deadly cold for generations. But perhaps even more fascinating than their environmental adaptations were the physical features their bodies developed over hundreds of thousands of years in response to the extreme cold. Have you ever looked closely at a Neanderthal reconstruction? Their bodies tell the story of perfect cold adaptation. They were shorter and more robust than modern humans, with barrel chests and powerful limbs. This stockier build minimized the surface area exposed to the cold while maximizing heat retention, the exact same principle used in modern cold weather survival training. Their faces featured prominent brow ridges and, most significantly, large, wide noses with expanded nasal cavities. This wasn't just a random physical trait. It was an incredible adaptation that served as a natural air conditioning system. When you breathe in frigid air directly into your lungs, it can cause damage and dramatically increase the calories your body burns trying to warm that air. The Neanderthals' large nasal passages acted as natural heat exchangers. As they breathed in, the freezing air would travel through their expanded nasal cavities, warming up significantly before ever reaching their lungs. Here's something truly mind-blowing. Studies of Neanderthal DNA have revealed genetic adaptations specifically for metabolizing fat efficiently, crucial for surviving in environments where carbohydrates were scarce and fat-rich meat was the primary food source. These weren't just random mutations. This was the result of natural selection over countless generations, slowly sculpting the perfect cold-weather human. While we modern humans might need high-tech gear to survive such conditions even briefly, Neanderthals' bodies were natural polar exploration suits, finely tuned by evolution itself. When we step back and consider the bigger picture, it's humbling to realize that Neanderthals didn't just endure these conditions for a few years or even a few centuries. They thrived in environments that would kill most modern humans within hours, and they did so for over 300,000 years. That's a success story that makes even our most impressive survival tales pale in comparison. They weren't just survivors, they were masters of adaptation, turning one of Earth's most hostile environments into their home through ingenuity, physical evolution, and an unbreakable community bond. For the longest time, we believed that art, symbolism, and abstract thinking were uniquely human traits, abilities that emerged only with our species, Homo sapiens. We told ourselves a comforting story, that we were special, that we alone possessed the capacity for creative expression and symbolic thought. And then we found the cave. In 2018, archaeologists made an extraordinary discovery in Spanish caves that would forever change our understanding of Neanderthals. On the walls of La Pasiega cave in northern Spain, they found something that, according to conventional wisdom, shouldn't exist: cave paintings. Not just any paintings, but artwork dated to more than 64,000 years ago, at least 20,000 years, before modern humans even arrived in Europe. Think about what this means. The only possible artists? Neanderthals, our supposedly primitive cousins, were creating art thousands of years before we thought they could. These weren't random marks either. They created geometric patterns, hand stencils, and abstract symbols using red ochre pigment, the same material later used by Homo sapiens in their cave paintings. This wasn't imitation. This was innovation that predated our arrival. But their artistic expression didn't stop at cave walls. At sites across Europe, archaeologists have discovered something equally remarkable: personal adornments. Neanderthals collected eagle talons, carefully perforated them, and wore them as jewelry. They gathered seashells, some from beaches over 30 miles away, and fashioned them into pendants. They even used mineral pigments like manganese and ochre, not just for practical purposes, but possibly to decorate their bodies. Imagine a Neanderthal woman carefully selecting a beautiful shell, perhaps appreciating its spiral pattern or iridescent interior. Picture her drilling a hole through it with precision, threading it onto a piece of animal sinew and wearing it against her skin. This wasn't about survival or practical need. This was about something deeper: aesthetic appreciation, personal expression, perhaps even status or identity within the group. The implications are profound. For something to be considered art or adornment, it requires complex cognitive abilities, abstract thinking, symbolic representation, planning, and a concept of beauty. It suggests awareness of self and others, the understanding that objects can communicate meaning beyond their practical function. There's even evidence suggesting Neanderthals may have created music. In Slovenia, researchers discovered a bare femur with 4 perfectly spaced holes that some believe may have been a flute. While this remains controversial, other evidence suggests they understood rhythm and sound. After all, if they could craft complex tools requiring dozens of precise steps, why not instruments to express themselves through sound? Perhaps most intriguingly, some of these artistic expressions appear in the deepest, darkest parts of caves, areas far from living spaces, where they would have needed to bring light specifically to create their art. This suggests these weren't casual doodles, but deliberate journeys into the darkness for a purpose. Was this purpose spiritual, ceremonial, a form of communication with forces beyond their understanding? We'll never know exactly what these artistic expressions meant to Neanderthals, but what's clear is that they weren't the grunting, thoughtless brutes of popular imagination. They were beings capable of looking at the world and seeing more than just resources for survival. They could see beauty, they could express themselves, they could create meaning. In many ways, this artistic capacity humanizes Neanderthals more than any other discovery. It bridges the gap between them and us, revealing that the spark of creativity, that distinctly human quality we've long prized, burned brightly in their minds as well. As we've journeyed through their world, we've seen Neanderthals as skilled hunters, clever toolmakers, compassionate community members, and ingenious survivors. Now we can add artists to that list. Creators who left their mark on the world, not just through their genes, but through deliberate expressions of their inner lives. But this brings us to the greatest mystery of all. If Neanderthals were so remarkably adapted, so intelligent, so creative, what happened to them? Why did they vanish from the face of the earth? After thriving for over 300,000 years, mastering the harshest environments Earth could throw at them, the Neanderthals vanished. Around 40,000 years ago, their traces began to fade from the archaeological record, like footprints washing away in the sand. But why? How could such a successful species simply disappear? This is one of archaeology's greatest mysteries, and the answer might be more complex than we ever imagined. For decades, the popular theory was simple. Modern humans, with their supposedly superior technology and intelligence, outcompeted or even violently replaced the Neanderthals. But recent discoveries have shattered this simplistic view. Think about it. Neanderthals had survived multiple ice ages, hunted the most dangerous animals on Earth, and developed sophisticated tools and social structures. They weren't easily displaced. They were masters of survival. So what really happened? Some scientists point to climate change as the primary culprit. Around the time Neanderthals disappeared, Europe experienced a series of devastating climate fluctuations. Imagine the environment changing so rapidly that even their incredible adaptations couldn't keep pace. The plants and animals they relied on would have vanished or moved, disrupting food chains that had sustained them for millennia. Others suggest that diseases might have played a crucial role. As modern humans expanded into Europe from Africa, they might have carried new pathogens that Neanderthals had never encountered. With no immunity to these unfamiliar diseases, entire communities could have been devastated. But here's where the story takes a fascinating turn. The Neanderthals didn't entirely disappear. They live on in us. Genetic studies have revealed that most people alive today who trace their ancestry outside of Africa carry between 1 to 4% Neanderthal DNA in their genes. This tells us something remarkable. Rather than a story of replacement, this was a story of integration. When modern humans and Neanderthals met, they didn't just fight. They formed relationships, they had children together, they shared knowledge, skills, and ultimately, their genetic legacy. Some of the genes we inherited from Neanderthals have proven incredibly valuable. They gave some populations better immune responses, helped others adapt to high altitudes, and even influenced our skin and hair characteristics. In a way, Neanderthal survival adaptations are still helping humanity today. Think about that for a moment. Every time you look in the mirror, you might be seeing traces of Neanderthal features that were sculpted by hundreds of thousands of years of evolution. When your immune system fights off an infection, you might be benefiting from genetic defenses that Neanderthals developed over countless generations. So perhaps we need to reframe how we think about the Neanderthals' disappearance. They didn't simply vanish, they became part of us. Their story didn't end 40,000 years ago. It continues in the DNA of billions of people alive today. Their legacy lives on not just in our genes, but in the lessons they teach us about human resilience, adaptability, and the complex web of relationships that makes us who we are. The next time someone uses Neanderthal as an insult, remember, carrying their genes might be one of humanity's greatest strengths. The mystery of their disappearance might never be fully solved, but one thing is certain. The story of the Neanderthals isn't just about extinction. It's about transformation, adaptation, and survival in ways we're only beginning to understand. As we come to the end of our journey through the world of the Neanderthals, we need to ask ourselves, what does their story really tell us about humanity? These weren't just cave dwellers who happened to survive until modern humans came along. They were innovators who mastered fire in an age of ice. Artists who painted their stories on cave walls before writing was even imagined. Healers who cared for their sick and injured when survival of the fittest was the only law nature knew. Warriors who faced down woolly mammoths with nothing but wooden spears and raw courage. For 300,000 years, they thrived in conditions that would break most of us within days. They did more than survive. They created culture. They buried their dead with flowers. They crafted jewelry from seashells and eagle talons. They passed down knowledge from generation to generation without a single written word. The Neanderthals remind us that humanity's story isn't a simple march of progress from primitive to advanced. It's a rich tapestry of different peoples, each finding their own unique ways to live, to love, to create, and to endure. Their legacy lives on, not just in our DNA, but in the fundamental lesson they teach us, that human ingenuity and determination can overcome even the most impossible odds. Next time you hear someone dismiss something as Neanderthal, remember these remarkable people. Remember the mothers who taught their children which plants could heal and which could kill. Remember the artists who ventured deep into dark caves to paint their visions. Remember the toolmakers who crafted weapons so perfect that modern scientists struggle to replicate them. If you've enjoyed this glimpse into our shared past, please take a moment to hit that like button. Share this video with someone who needs to be reminded that human history is far richer and more fascinating than our textbooks often suggest. And make sure you're subscribed to The Dawn of Humankind, where we bring the past to life and uncover the forgotten stories that shaped our world. Want to dive deeper into prehistoric mysteries? Drop a comment below telling us which ancient culture or civilization you'd like us to explore next. From the first toolmakers of Africa to the mysterious Denisovans of Asia, there are countless stories waiting to be told. Thank you for joining me on this journey back in time. Until our next adventure into the past, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep wondering about the remarkable story of human survival that brought us all here today. I'll see you in our next journey through time.